there to the voluntary community sector and its significance to the city. And we'd like our next speaker, Emma Lipscomb, who's a community organiser working with Unison, making links with that sector. In this city, there are something like 5,000 people employed in the voluntary and community sector. It is not only a vital area of service provision, it actually is a key area of employment, but many of those jobs are under risk as we speak because of the cuts in government funding. Emma?
Hello. As Kenny said, and also the previous speaker, we are facing a huge cuts within the public sector, but also we can't forget the community voluntary sector. I think it's often seen as something as a net under the public sector, picking up a lot of bits. That's not a very nice way, I think, of seeing it. I much rather think of it as dovetailing with the public sector and the health sector. And I think we know that we've hit lots of cuts, and we know that also they have, but to just put it in perspective, in the last year, many of them, actually a huge proportion, have had to make redundancies, have had to reduce their services. And as we can imagine, they're actually facing, at the moment, a huge increase in demand. So how is this fair for them? Obviously it's not. Of a recent survey done by the Voluntary Organisation Network North East, 92% actually get some of their funding or all of their funding from the public sector. As with the public sector, they provide a very imperative service to vulnerable people across the city. As with the public sector, they're offering advice, and they're in the community, they're out there. So when people might not be able to go and know how to engage with services, they suddenly find a service within their area and find a font of knowledge, and they're absolutely essential, as are we. So what we need to do is, as we're facing the cuts against the public sector, we need to realise that the community voluntary sector's out there. We need to realise that if we join together, there's more strength. We need to realise that what they're doing or what we're doing fits together. We need to realise that if we join together and grow together, we are all in it together, but we're not in it with Nick, we're not in it with David, we're in it together as this, and we're going to be in it together to fight against them. Thanks.
The introduction we gave to the speaker who's going to respond to the proposed cuts in revenues and benefits can now stand, because Joanna's now come. Her commitment to public services was such that she was working well beyond her required time tonight. Joanne Nicholson.
Hello. I'd like to talk to you today about the reality of job loss. If I get a please forgive me. Our work and revenues benefits, as you've heard, we've been told our department will lose 31 jobs. Each team's going to be affected, and one team's going to be cut in half. For some of my colleagues and myself, this means their entire household income's at risk. I'm a sole wage earner. I inherited my home at 23, and I've worked very hard to keep it ever since. I live in a small town, Stanley, you might have heard of it. That's done little in economic recovery since the close of manufacturing in the 80s and 90s. There simply aren't any jobs. I've always had to travel to find work. Job losses in Newcastle affect not only the city directly, but the surrounding towns and cities as well. If I lose my job, the equation is simple. I'll lose my family home. Sorry. I'll be forced to sell below its market value and be denied state benefits as a result. I'll be ineligible for council housing as I've got no dependents and therefore low points. My mortgage is currently less than the market rent. That means my cost of living will rise as my income falls. I've no pension because I can't afford to pay for the upkeep of my house, travel costs, and invest in my future. I plan my mortgage to be paid in full in my 50s. I'd hope my future funds would be in the bricks and mortar left by my parents, who themselves have worked all their lives to provide it. But however scared I am of that, I'm equally afraid of the impact in the city and the community who have given me the opportunity to work in a role that I find both rewarding and challenging. Revenues clerk may not be the most glamorous or popular, but it is necessary and may become even more necessary in these times. Have you heard about the cuts in the grants? But cuts to staff mean increased automation and a restriction in the ability to help and advise people like us who find themselves suddenly in changed financial circumstances. It means being unable to advocate for the most vulnerable and an inability to protect good community links and working relationships, the very things that should be the focus of a modern, accessible local authority that puts the local right at its core. Finally, I would like to remind you why we're here today by employing some old but wise words. The events of the past few weeks must have shown you and you that a Liberal government is first and foremost a capitalist government. If this had taken place under a Conservative government, every Liberal platform would have run with a denunciation of the wicked Tories. But because it's the Liberals who are equally responsible, every Liberal speaker is dumb. The words of Pierre Hardy in his election address in 1910, but still pertinent. We're going to have to remind the elected members that it's not good enough to remain dumb, to campaign and fight for the interests of the city, its citizens and its employees.
Thanks, Joanne. And I think that puts in a very clear context. One, the commitment to public service delivery, and the fact that no service is a back office service. Every service is providing an important service to the community, and the human impact of what is happening to workers. And across the City Council, we have workers in the same position, not knowing whether they're going to be in the spotlight for cuts, whether they're going to have a job within 6 months' time. The next speaker represents a group of workers who, again, the Tories have said we're going to protect and provide important services to young people, in particular children and nursery provision, and that's the Sure Start service. Stephen Douglas is a Unison rep in Sure Start.
I say again, thank you very much for coming along. Hope you're all warm enough. So I've been asked to speak today of how Sure Start Children's Centres in Newcastle may be affected by the proposed cuts. Let's have a look firstly at who's involved in Sure Start Children's Centres. We have staff based within the centres, early years play practitioners, Sure Start development workers, information outreach workers, speech and language therapists, welfare rights advisors and admin staff, that's to name but a few, delivering universal and targeted services to support the families. And then we can look outside of the children's centres to those commissioned services made up of voluntary local organisations, including family support workers, parent support advisors within schools, dads workers, and others working within the community-based projects. Across the city, we have thousands of families accessing, using, and often depending on our services. We work closely with parents and carers, many lone parents, some very young, and some of our most vulnerable families. For some parents and carers, Sure Start Children's Centre is a base where they have used services in the past and continue to do so for information, advice, and support. Very often turning to our Sure Start Children's Centres for the support and advice they need to get them through the day. Can we, as a city, really make changes to reduce the service? What does Sure Start Children's Centres offer parents and carers? It's a place to turn to with any struggles that they may face. We are here to support them. We have dedicated, skilled staff helping parents to get back into or to start off their careers, providing them with the opportunities to attend training. We support carers and parents with benefit entitlements, ensuring carers and parents can claim what they are entitled to, making life much more manageable for some struggling families across Newcastle. Sure Start Children's Centres, Sure Start Children's Centres offer an open door policy, creating a place for parents and carers to turn to, finding a helpful, smiling face for which some can be hard to find otherwise. I've met parents and carers who told me that before accessing these Sure Start Children's Centres, they had little or no friends, living in near isolation, nobody to call upon for a chat, nobody there to really support their emotional needs. I was told that now they are accessing the Sure Start Children's Centres, they have made friends, they now have people to rely on, even if it is only for 1 hour a week. They now have the confidence to get out there, meet people and live their lives. So many parents and carers have went back into work, got their life back into track and began to thrive. Many tell me that it was due to the support they received from their local Sure Start Children's Centres. Can we as a city take this away? I now want to talk briefly of how the children of the city may become affected if these cuts come into place. The hard to reach children no longer reached. The children of struggling families still struggling, unable to thrive. A Sure Start Children's Centre is there to do what it says in the tin, to give every single child a sure start in life. Without Sure Start Children's Centres, who will continue to ensure this? After all, who are the future of Newcastle? The staff working in and around the children's centres? The parents or the carers? Possibly, although I believe the future of Newcastle are those young children. Those young children who currently depend on us to aid their development and need us adults to help them in the first years of their life. In years to come, they may be the ones leading the city and looking after us. So how may these cuts affect the staff working for Sure Start Children's Centres? The staff body is made up of many staff, with about 90% of these being women, all ages and all the different stages of their lives. I've asked some staff how they would feel about changes to services and the possibility of losing their job. a job which every single person involved with Sure Start has worked hard to get and is currently working hard to maintain. One of my colleagues is planning for her wedding next year, a very special time of her life. She has also recently took out a mortgage on a new home, from which she wants to share with her partner. My colleague is now worried that she may not be able to now afford a wedding if her job is to be lost, and the thought of not being able to pay her mortgage frightens her further. Others also fear for their now uncertain future. They question how they will be able to support their families and keep their homes. Personally, I've worked for Sure Start Children's Centre since September just gone. I've worked full-time whilst I was studying, like many others in Newcastle, to get to the position which I currently hold. I now fear that the position that I've put in so much effort to try to get may be taken away from me. I've been told many times and can now say that if jobs were to be lost, we will be in a situation where many of my colleagues older than me feel that they will struggle to get back into their treasured career, which they chose many years ago and have worked so hard within. They are worried that they will not be able to find another job to continue their already fantastic work. Can we, as a city, let this happen? Remember, we're not alone. There are people all around the country defending the good work that Sure Start Children's Centres and its staff do. The national campaign, Shout Out for a Sure Start, is working alongside us, fighting our corner with the national government. But it's up to us to tell the city of Newcastle about the life-changing differences that children's centres really do make. With changes in AMA and student fees on the rise, an already difficult job market, and now further cuts proposed, the city of Newcastle can be a difficult city to live in. Let's not make it any harder for our children. I ask everybody here today to stand together to oppose these cuts. Together we are stronger. Thank you very much for listening. Yes.